Now, I'd like to conclude with an example from the Old Testament. If you'd turn with me in conclusion to Genesis chapter 13. I say in conclusion just to give you a little hope. In conclusion, usually, when preachers say in conclusion, it's a big fat lie. They're going to go on and on and on. But I mean this now. In conclusion, I want to just give you an example of what I'm talking about here. This is Genesis chapter 13, talking about Abraham. And he had I believe it's his nephew named Lot. Abraham and Lot have traveled from where they were to where God was taking them to be, in the land of promise, the promised land as it's called. And let's begin reading with verse 5. Abraham was sent by God, and he brought Lot with him. Well, let's back up a little bit. Let's go just go back to verse 1. How about that? Abram went out of Egypt, he and his wife, all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. And Abram was very rich. You know why he was rich, by the way? Because he was blessed by God. It was God's blessing that made him rich. He was rich in cattle and silver and gold, and he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, where Abram called upon the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. Notice that Abram is the one sent by God, who has the relation with God. Lot is sort of, we might say, hanging on, being blessed because of his proximity to Abraham. And Lot had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell there, for their substance was great, so they could not dwell there together. And there was a strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, I will go to the right. And if thou depart to the right, then I will go to the left. Now notice Abraham, in a very gentle way, a very friendly way, he says, our herdsmen are fighting in the land here for us to be together. It's not enough to support us both. You take one side and I'll take the other side. He's just being fair with him. And by the way, he could have said, Lot, I'm the one here who's blessed by God, and you're getting blessed because I'm blessed. But he didn't say anything about that. We know that from reading the text. Now notice verse 10. Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld the plain of Jordan, for it was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord. Like the land of Egypt, when thou comest to Zoar. I presume when they put that in there, they would assume everybody knows what that's like. But we don't know what that's like. But anyway, notice it was well watered. The plain of Jordan, well watered everywhere. A pretty land, nice land. Verse 11. Then Lot chose for him all the plain of Jordan. In other words, get the picture. He's standing there with Abraham, and Abraham says, You take one side and I'll take the other. And he looks over here and says, It's well watered, and it's beautiful, and it's like the Garden of Eden. And over here is a bunch of rocks and stones and barrenness. I believe I'll take this over here. And Abraham, you can have that. Now, verse 11. Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed to the east, and they separated themselves one for the other. And Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the land of the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Now, if you've ever read the story about Abram and Lot and Sodom, you know what's going to happen with Lot as he ends up in Sodom. But Lot chose the better land. Let's put it that way. Lot chose the better part. Now, Abram here could have, and he would have been justified to be a little bit disappointed or to be bummed out or to adopt an attitude sort of like we read from Solomon and saying, well, what's this all about? I leave where I was and I followed God and I came out here to this promised land and God blessed us, and now I say to Lot, let's don't fight. You take one side and I'll take the other. And he takes all the good part. He takes everything that's good and leaves me with these rocks and stones. And he could have had justification to feel a little bit unhappy here. But notice what God says to him in verse 14. Bearing in mind everything we have just read this morning. The Lord said unto Abram, and by the way, this is really beautiful because Abram was not just there all by himself. He was not just there having to face this. He's got the Lord with him. And even though Lot took the better land, Abraham's got the Lord. And the Lord said unto Abram, after Lot was separated from him, listen to these words from the Lord. Lift up now thine eyes. Listen to this. Hear this spiritually. Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art. In other words, where you are now, lift up your eyes and see a little higher. Lift up your eyes a little higher from where you are now. Northward, southward, eastward, westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed forever. Now, the land that he's talking about, later on in the Bible, it comes to be called the Promised Land, or the Land of Promise. And I'd like to say, as an example, what God is saying here is lift up your eyes and see a little higher, and look at my promise. Lift up your eyes from your present circumstance, from where you stand now, and look at what my promises are to you. Look at what I'm able to do in your life. See, if we keep our eyes down like the world, like people that don't know God, we're going to experience all the same things the world experiences. We're going to experience life that seems futile and empty and vain. And no matter how things might improve, you could get everything that Solomon had, and you could still have that same attitude. I've read about people. I saw a story in the New York Times one time. I thought it was very interesting about people. They did a study of people who won the lottery. Who got all the right numbers, and they won the big prize. Won the lottery, thousands of dollars. And they came back a year later. They had like 7 people, and they went back to them a year later to see how their lives were. And with only one exception, all but one, their lives were worse a year later than they were before they ever won the lottery. They had more trouble, more problems. They were worse financially, and their families were all mad at them because they didn't, solve all their problems. It made their lives worse. What I'm saying to you is this: if you live life like everybody around you in the world, you're going to experience what everybody around you in the world experiences, and it's going to be futile and vain. But God's admonition to us here, as Christians especially, lift up your eyes from where you are now and see things from His perspective. And here He says to Abram, all the land which you see, I will give it, and to thy seed forever. What He's saying in that is, look at my promises. Look at my promise to you. Look at me as a provider for you. I can give to you things that will satisfy you, and you'll never feel vain or empty or unsatisfied. But the choice is up to us how we're going to see things, how we're going to deal with things and react to things. Okay, let's all stand up today. See, I kept my word. That really was the last thing.